न च श्रोत्रजिह्वे न च घ्राणनेत्रे न च
Good morning, everyone. So this is the
Morning.
final session for my visit here. It's been a very wonderful visit so far. Last night we went to this laser show at Stone Mountain. It was really fantastic. And in the morning we climbed to the top, and I've gotten to meet some old friends that I remember from early trips, and to meet a lot of new friends. So it's really a very nice visit, and I'm very happy to see so much enthusiasm and so many good questions and so much seriousness. So really, I know you had the good fortune of having Swami Yogeshanji for many years and Brother Shankara for many years, and really the center has really developed very nicely. And really, I pray to Thakur and Ma will continue to develop and grow. And maybe you'll have a new Swami here before too long. Let us see what happens. So the topic this morning, and like yesterday, I like questions. I'll try to go through it more or less without questions in the beginning, and then there'll be plenty of time for questions. And we can also go over things from yesterday. If there's questions, those of you who were here for yesterday's session. Today, I want to also examine a series of concepts that more or less mirror the spiritual journey that many of us take from the very early stages when we're not quite sure about things, we're struggling with concepts, we may have a little doubt about
Good to
things.
see you again, sir.
We develop a little more conviction, and we develop some ideas and start to have some concepts that we hold on to. And then we have to make these little decisions, which of these things are valuable for us, which are universal truths, how do we continue with all of this, and ultimately get to that stage where we develop some deep conviction regarding a spiritual life and some intensity of yearning and longing, and then we have finally God-willing realization. So I'm going to do this by going through a series of terms, concepts and terms, as we did yesterday with the talk on meditation. And I'm going to use these Sanskrit terms because they are helpful in the sense that they don't carry a lot of baggage. When we use terms like faith and belief, then sometimes we have some preconceived notions about what we're talking about. This is a nice way to kind of have a fresh start with things. So we'll start out with actually two things combined. This concept of Shraddha. And I'm going to combine it with this other concept, Samshaya. Now this will sound very strange that I'm combining normally what we would say is faith and doubt. Yeah, so this Shraddha, and we'll spend a little time with this. Just for now, we'll say faith. I don't think it's a good translation, but I'll go through that. And what is the role of doubt? The role of doubt in spiritual life is something that's very, very important. Sometimes we'll find ourselves in a tradition that will emphasize this concept, belief before reason. This is one of the concepts that we find in different spiritual traditions, that we accept something first, and either we don't question it, or after we've accepted it, then we try to make it, maybe rationalize it or give some sense to it. Yeah. In our Vedantic tradition, the role of doubt is very important. And that means the role of reason is very important. So I emphasize these things because none of us should feel bad if we have doubts. That we don't develop real conviction unless we have doubts in the beginning. And doubt, not in the sense of being cynical about things and dismissing things and everything, but a real deep felt commitment not to accept something unless and until it makes sense to us. Yeah. Because if we enter into a tradition that says you have to accept this, that don't worry if it makes sense or doesn't make sense, that this is something that's part of our tradition, you should accept it, don't question it, then it's a big red flag for me, at least. One of the things that attracted me most to Vedanta was this idea that we should question things. So the samshaya doubt, let me put it more as a questioning, keeping an open mind. Now this idea of shraddha, though it's translated as faith, it has many other elements that are added to it. The one will be humility. If because Shraddha is an attitude, it's an attitude, this attitude of humility, this attitude of respect for a tradition, attitude of reverence. Usually, Shraddha is with regard to the teachings of the Guru and the teachings of the scriptures. This is the traditional definition that we get. This Vishwasa means that we have some conviction, not yet conviction in the truth of what we're told, but conviction in the goodness of the Guru, the legitimacy of the tradition, and to the extent that we're willing to invest our time and our energy in that tradition. So we have to examine things at the very beginning to make sure that we're not jumping into something that we don't understand, or that we're told we don't have to understand. So this is this idea is shraddha, and it really means an openness. Openness to something that we approach a tradition with the knowledge that we have something to learn, that we don't have all of the answers ourselves. There's a very nice Zen story that a young Zen monk goes to an old Zen master, and this young Zen monk is very proud of his learning. And he goes to the master and bows down and sits before him, and he says, "You please teach me something," with a little bit of arrogance, the way he says it. So the Zen master said, "All right, let's have a cup of tea first." So he pours a cup of tea for himself, he pours a cup of tea for the other, but he keeps pouring, and the tea keeps spilling over. And this young student, finally, he's exasperated, and he said, "Why do you keep pouring tea in a cup that's already full?" And he said, "See, you've come for advice. How can I give advice when you're already full? You have to be open, some space to be able to accept it." So this is shraddha. And we shouldn't think that there's no room for doubt. If we look at especially the life of Swami Vivekananda, how he questioned everything when he went to Sri Ramakrishna, but he didn't abandon him. Sometimes he was very, very strong. He had a relationship with Sri Ramakrishna that was so free and open. Most of the direct disciples did. And afterwards, sometimes they would leave and say, "Oh my God, how did I talk to him? I didn't realize who I was sitting in front of." But they would really, Swamiji, then of course he was Narendra, he would really say, "These are all hallucinations of your mind. What is this? You're talking to the Divine Mother. This is just madness." And so he was very free about these things. That, "Oh, you say that God is everything. This is madness. How can we say that some physical object is God?" So he questioned everything. And because of that, his faith became very strong. But even though he questioned, he knew that here is a man of perfect purity, of the highest type of realization, that there has to be something behind all of this. So this is that type of doubt. If it's a type of doubt that just rejects things, then it's very, very harmful in spiritual life. We read in Gita, samshaya vanashyati. Yeah, that somebody who is by nature cynical. By nature, whatever you say, that's nonsense. This person will go to ruin. There'll be no chance in spiritual life. So the very strong statements that we get in Gita, that these people without Shraddha are not even to hear the truth, because it won't make any difference to them. And if they belittle some of these beautiful teachings, it'll be harmful for them. So we have to have a very healthy type of doubt. There's samshaya, very healthy type of doubt that is simply a recognition that we know that we haven't really understood it, and we don't want to pretend that we accept something or pretend we understand something if we don't. So there's a type of honesty that's involved in this Shraddha. And no one should feel that, oh, everybody else accepts it, I have to accept it. Yeah. So this is the very first thing that we have, this Shraddha, which will include this doubt. We should never think that that can't be part of this this feeling of reverence and humility and even faith. But this faith, it's not yet, it doesn't reach the level of conviction. Now we'll get to this term, Vishwasa. Oh, I didn't give the list of the terms yet. Huh? So we start as Samshaya Shraddha. Then after that, we'll get a term that's not generally thought of as a technical term, Mata. Mata, Bengali mat. Yeah, we don't think it's a technical term, but it is actually a technical term. It's very close to what we have the next with darshan. So mata is some type of somewhere between an opinion and a doctrine. And we'll find out that one of the crucial things, not just in this particular topic, but in life itself, is making a distinction between what belongs to opinion and what belongs to real conviction, we can say. Yeah, because in Vedanta, we really don't like this idea of dogma, that you have to accept something dogmatically. That's Swamiji's especially, that religion is not to be found in doctrines or even doctrines or dogmas. He uses both of these terms. So we'll have this mata, then darshana, we take as a real systematic body of philosophy. The philosophical school will be darshana, and then we'll get to Vishwasa, in Bengali Vishwas. Vishwasa. These are sometimes conflated, these two terms, Shraddha and Vishwasa. They both are spoken of as meaning faith. But Shraddha, in the beginning, is just this openness, this reverence. Real Vishwasa means conviction. Now and it comes much later. It comes much later. This absolute conviction in the truth of the scriptures and the possibility of God realization. All of these things. This is part of the journey. Yes. Trust. It's used as trust. But in this particular sense, yeah, we say, yeah, Vishwas Kuri. I trust you? Yeah. But here, from the philosophical point of view, I'm going to translate it as conviction. That we're convinced. We're really convinced of the truth of something. So much so that we can almost taste it. It's very strong. So yeah, it does have that meaning of trust also. But here, if we go through one by one, then we'll to this idea of conviction. And then this conviction will lead to something which is called vyakulata. Now, this vyakulata is one of the most important teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. In the English version, in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, it's usually translated as longing for God, tremendous longing for God, but it's more than that. This vyakulata, it actually means some type of agony. Yeah, and the example that we get, uh, in India, they have the little piece of cloth that they use for a towel. It's called the gamcha. And when anybody goes for bath, afterwards, you simply wash the whole thing and wring it out. And you'll see people, they'll wring it out, so there's not a drop left. So he says this longing for God is so great that you feel like your heart is being wrung like that. He gives out other examples and things, yeah. So, and then ultimately, what we call anubhuti, direct experience. So this anubhuti will be realization, self-realization, God realization, enlightenment, whatever it is. So this will be kind of the path that we're going to take. So we'll see that this Shraddha and Vishwasa, they look very similar, but there's a big gap. The Vishwasa comes at the very end. We have a certain, of course, a certain type of conviction at the beginning of spiritual life, but it's a hopeful conviction. It's not that now we've examined it so deeply and had some experience and everything that we know that this is absolutely true. This will come much later. So we start out again with the Shraddha, and again this term samshaya doubt. So I'm going to talk about three levels of doubt here. The first is just, as I say, this very doubting type, skeptical type of attitude. That this is not at all suited for spiritual life. Some say not. Then this healthy type of doubt. There'll be a very healthy type of doubt. That means questioning. That means that we take something seriously enough that we want to get to the heart of it. We want to really find out if there's some truth in this. And for many of us, this is one of the most appealing aspects of Vedanta. If I had read in Vedanta in the beginning that these are the things you have to accept, I would have said, forget it. Yeah, why do I have to accept it if it doesn't make sense to me? Yeah. So we're encouraged. How Sri Ramakrishna encouraged Swamiji to question everything, examine everything. So this desire to examine things. So this is kind of the second meaning, some say, but ultimately, doubt will remain with us to a certain extent, a little bit of it, until God realization. So we read in this Mundaka Upanishad that when we have the highest type of realization, three things will happen. One, all of the knots of the heart will be untied. That means all of the angularities that we have, all of the bad tendencies that we have, all of these things will be eliminated. We'll get that real purity of heart. And all of our karma will be exhausted. That means that whatever seed was there for the next future birth will be burned up. That'll be gone. But the other thing is that all of our doubts will be rent asunder. So this very final type of doubt will be there to the very end. A little bit of it. Now we may not even feel it, but if somebody says to us, do you have absolute conviction that God can be realized in this very lifetime? I'll say, well, I'm betting on it, but I threw all of my chips in. But until it really happens, I can't quite honestly say that I have absolute conviction. Once we have that experience, then of course, then doubt is removed. So that final little element of doubt will go at that point. So this we'll see with the direct disciples that there were some who questioned everything, Swamiji. There were some who questioned nothing. So we have Latu Maharaj. His Shraddha manifested in a different way. Whatever Sri Ramakrishna said, that was truth to him. So there are others like that. But even Latu Maharaj, even he spent his whole life doing intense spiritual practice to have that realization, so that that ultimate, whatever little bit of doubt was left, that would disappear. So this is the importance of doubt and questioning, and but keeping an open mind. So this is why I think it sounds counterintuitive to combine faith and doubt together. But this samshaya and this shraddha, I think it's important to recognize that there is a place for a questioning attitude and an open-mindedness, that these things should go together, actually. That the more that we question things with the understanding that we don't understand it. See, there are two different ways we can approach something. If something doesn't make sense, we can say it's nonsense, that this is a ridiculous idea, or we can say that we find this in the scriptures. These great souls have made these statements. I know that it's my lack of understanding that is preventing me from really fully appreciating this idea. So there's different type of approach that we have. So I mentioned this Latu Maharaj. His Shraddha manifested in a very particular way, that if Ramakrishna said something, then that was the final truth. That meant that he would follow it exactly. So we know the very famous incident that the Latu Maharaj, he was serving Sri Ramakrishna, and we don't know exactly when it was. My guess is that it was probably maybe 8, 9 o'clock at night, something like that. And Sri Ramakrishna called for him, and they said, "Oh, Latu is sleeping." So he came. He called for him, telling him, bring him here, and he gave a big scolding to the Latu. And he said, if you sleep at this time of night, when will you meditate? Now, the Latu Maharaj, he heard these words, and to him, it was nighttime is meant for meditation. So he took a vow to himself that he will never sleep at nighttime. Yeah. And that during the day, and he did it for the whole lifetime. During the day, he would take a little nap, maybe in the morning or afternoon, something like that. Whole night, he would stay awake. And he says in the beginning, this first time he tried, sleep would come. And he would get up and he would slap his face and he would pour water in his face and he would walk around until he would manage to stay awake the whole night. Then the second night, the same thing, and gradually it became a habit with him. So whole life he did this. And when all of the monks lived together at Varanagama, this was the first monastery, they didn't have any rooms of their own, one great big large room. They all slept just on the floor next to each other. And one of the brother monks, Swami Atmajnanananda, I think, he heard tick, 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 tick. So he thought, oh, maybe there's a mouse or something like that. So he turned on the light and it stopped. They had some lantern or something. There was no electricity. Yeah. And then again, tick, 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 tick. And he turned on the light again. Everything stopped. And then he saw this Latu, he was then Swami Atmajnananda, was lying next to him, completely covered with a blanket. And he had some suspicion. So he pulled off the blanket. He said, Latu Maharaj is doing his japa. And he said, you rascal, we're sleeping all night, you're doing meditation and japa like that. So this is Latu Maharaj. There's another incident which must have taken place before this, because it had to do when this Latu, when he would wake up in the morning, he would not open his eyes unless he could see Sri Ramakrishna before him. And Sri Ramakrishna knew this. So when Latu would wake up, he would call out, are you there? Are you there? And Sri Ramakrishna, if he wasn't there, he'd come running and everything. And then he would open his eyes, because the first face he had to see in the morning was the face of Sri Ramakrishna. So this was the Shraddha that Latu had. It was completely different from what we'll find with some of the other direct disciples. But so the Shraddha is according to our own particular nature and personality. There's a very nice verse from the Bhagavad Gita that says that we're defined by our Shraddha, that each person has his own Shraddha. Shraddhamayo yam purusha, yoyat Shraddha sayevasaha. We are, it is the Shraddha. What is it that we hold in the highest reverence? This is the defining feature of an individual. It was very nice. There was kind of a new age teacher some years ago. I don't remember her name or if she had any big following or anything, but she had a little motto that was, tell me who you love and I'll tell you who you are. So the Shraddha, yeah, that whom we love the most, which is most valuable to us, is defined as a Shraddha. So this was the way that the Shraddha manifested in the life of Latu. Swami Latu Maharaj, Swami Atmajnanananda. He was the orphan boy. He was the only uneducated and actually non-Bengali, of the direct disciples from Bihar. He came with his uncle to work in the house of Ramchandra Datta, great devotee of Swami Krishna, and immediately he used to be given the task of carrying things from Ram's house to Dakshineshwar. And immediately he fell in love with Swami Krishna. And Thakur recognized him as something very special. And at one point he said to Ram, he said, can you give me this boy? So he ended up staying with him and serving Holy Mother. And he was considered really to be one of the jewels of our order. Atmajnanananda is a marvel. He was a marvel. But the other disciples, most of them were highly educated, Western educated. Western educated means they were taught to question things. And they would hear these statements about visions and Divine Mother talking and everything else. And they're used to this very rational type of Western scientific and philosophical thought. The quote from Swami Atmajnanananda, from the great master, it says, those people who critically analyze the events of the master's wonderfully unique life will ultimately find their power of judgment baffled, stupefied, and spellbound. We also had no lack of doubts. Because they see this meeting of Swami Krishna and the disciples was a meeting of two different worlds. The Swami Krishna from this orthodox Brahmin village life to these Western educated English speaking young men who came to Swami Krishna. Two different worlds. So naturally there was something strange and unusual for them. So he said, we also had no lack of doubts. And we think that at present, no one would dare test the master as we did. It often happened that many of us who doubted the master and challenged him were defeated, and we had to hang our heads in shame. So their Shraddha for Swami Krishna developed gradually also. See, Swamiji's first meeting, he said that his opinion was that Swami Krishna was a madman. But he said, at the same time, I've never seen such purity, such love of God, such a divine emotions and realizations. So his mind was disturbed. Well, who is this man? But he kept coming back because of that Shraddha. There was an incident also for several weeks. Swami Krishna did not talk to this Narendra Swamiji or even speak to him or even look at him. And then finally he said, and Narendra kept coming. He would come, sit for a while, go out, talk to Hazara, whatever. And finally he said, why do you keep coming? I don't even look at you or talk to you. And he said, I come because I love you. And Sri Ramakrishna was so happy. He said, you see, I was testing you, you see. So he had that, this Shraddha is also love. Yeah, he had that tremendous type of love and faith. One of the most almost skeptical of the direct disciples was Swami Yogananda. His name was Yogan before. He was the only direct disciple who lived within walking distance of Swami Krishna in the village of Dakshineswar. So he had the opportunity to come quite often and spend the night with Swami Krishna. Now, he's hearing day and night about this lust and gold and monks to not look at the face of a woman, all the very strict things. And one night he's staying there and he sees that Sri Ramakrishna got up in the middle of the night and starts walking north of his room. Now, north of his room is the Nahabad where Holy Mother lives. So he said, this horrible doubt came into my mind. And he said he was ashamed even to have this thought come into his mind, but it seized his mind. That is it possible that here this so-called great soul is talking day and night about renunciation of lust and gold, and at nighttime he's going to spend the night with his wife. There's this beautiful young woman there. That is it possible? And without being able to control himself, he walked outside and positioned himself so that he could see where Sri Ramakrishna was going. Now, he was going just to there was no bathroom at that time. He was going just into the woods to answer the call of nature. And this Yogan, he was probably almost paralyzed there. He could have just, but he saw what happened. But he was still there when Sri Ramakrishna came back. And as soon as he saw, he understood. He said, you were testing me that way. And he said, very good. He said, once you test a sadhu by day and by night, then only will one have faith in him. So we start out with a little bit of shraddha, but it grows. This is why that little doubt can be there, and this testing has to be there. And it'll eventually develop into that type of shraddha where we have perfect faith. Now we can say trust also, vishwasa, that we have perfect faith that we can follow without question the teachings. We can question the reasoning behind it, but we never question the fact that it may be bad advice for us. These are two different things. Yeah, we're told to do something and we say, okay, I'll do it. Say Sri Ramakrishna, he told one of his very young disciples, he said funny things. Don't tie a knot. Don't lock a door. A few, I don't remember, little things like that. And he followed all of these things, and he said how clever he is, intelligent. He even understood. We may think, what do these things mean? But tying a knot to him was some, or locking a door, that not having that openness and the crookedness of mind and things. So, Shraddha, we can have faith that, yes, I'm told to do this, that this is the best thing for me. But I can still try to figure out what it is. Swamiji demanded this of his own disciples. He said, if I tell you to jump off a building, you jump off first and then ask me why later. Yeah, he really, and his disciples were so faithful to him. There's one story of the Swami Nishchayananda. He was a military man, I think Marathi, a military man. And Swamiji told him one day that I want you to go across to the other side. See, this is the Bhagavatas on one side of Ganges, the other side was the Calcutta side. And well, we need to purchase a cow for the monastery for milk. So I want you to go there and make sure that that you don't let the cow doesn't get loose. Hold on tight to the cow. So they purchased the cow and they came back on some small boat. That was the only way to get across at that time. And somehow the cow got a little skittish and the boat turned over. And so the Swami held on to the rope and the cow went under the water. He went under the water and nobody saw them. And they all went back and they told Swamiji that Nishchayananda Swami, he must have drowned. They were holding on to the rope of the cow and everything. So then some hours later, he shows up soaking wet, holding the rope with the cow. And yeah, Swamiji says, "Oh, you fool! What did you? Why did you risk your life?" And he said, "You told me, Swamiji, don't let go of the rope." So that was the nature of his Shraddha. So his disciples were like that. He and Swami Kalyana, no, Kalyana, yeah, Swamiji sent them to go to this Kankal near Hardwar to serve the sadhus there, to nurse them, because there was no hospital, there was no place. If they fell ill, there was no one to nurse them. So the Swami Kalyanandi, he never went back to Bellarmine. He never went back to visit headquarters or anything. They said, "Why?" He said, "Swamiji told me to stay here." Yeah. So that was the way their Shraddha manifested itself. So everyone is different. As I say with Swamiji, it was a fight from the beginning to the end. He said, "Let none regret that they were difficult to convince. I fought my master for 6 years with the result that I knew every inch of the way." Every inch of the way. So this questioning and everything, this is how we develop that really firm conviction about things. And this doubt, we wonder, this doubt that Swamiji had, at least with regard to is Ramakrishna really a divine avatar incarnation? This had lasted up to the very, very end. As we know, another well-known incident, just a few days before Ramakrishna passed away, Narendra was sitting by his side. This actually went on for I don't know, weeks or months, that the two of them would be alone every afternoon, and Ramakrishna would give instructions to Narendra in private. So about how to keep the young boys together, how to start this monastic order, all different things about future mission. So anyhow, this Narendra, or Swami Vivekananda, thought came into his mind. If in the midst of this terrible suffering, because this Ramakrishna had this throat cancer, this tumor in his throat, we can hardly imagine. They didn't have this anesthesia, pain things and everything. It was just so bad that there was even a hole there, and blood was gushing. It's hard to imagine. And he said, if in the midst of this suffering, he can still maintain that he's an avatar, then only will I believe it. And Sri Ramakrishna, he had this ability to know what was in the mind of other people. And he said, "Oh, my Naren, even now you have doubts." And then that famous statement, "He who was Rama, he who was Krishna, is now in this body." That's Ramakrishna. And he said, "But not in your Vedantic sense." Now, sometimes people wonder, what did that mean? I mean, not in the sense that God dwells within everybody. That we know, but the avatar is a special manifestation. So he meant in that particular sense. Now I want to talk about doubt in just from a different point of view, because doubt turns out to be an essential element of the whole Vedantic worldview. We don't accept anything, even the existence of the external universe. That really we start out with the kind of radical doubt, and in Western philosophy, this was the defining feature of the very great French philosopher Descartes. Most people have heard about him. He was also a mathematician. We have the Cartesian planes, all sorts of different things. He was very famous for this idea. I think, therefore I am. So for him, this radical doubt came that is there anything that we know with certainty, that we don't accept on faith, that we don't just accept as a matter of fact, that we can't possibly doubt? And he has a long thing. I won't read the whole thing, but it starts out with this doubt as to whether we're even awake or whether we're dreaming. And we find this in Vedantic thinking, Buddhist thinking, and everything, that how do we know for certain that we're awake? When we dream, we're convinced that we're awake until we awaken, then we find that we're dreaming. So he writes, never, I must consider that I'm a man, and that consequently I am in the habit of sleeping and representing to myself in dreams those same things, or even sometimes others less probable, which the insane think are presented to them in their waking moments. How often have I dreamed that I was in these familiar circumstances, that I was dressed and occupied this place by the fire, when really I was lying undressed in bed. At the present moment, however, I certainly look upon this paper with eyes wide awake. The head which I now move is not asleep. I extend its hand consciously and with express purpose, and I perceive it. The occurrences in sleep are not so distinct as all this. But I cannot forget that at other times I've been deceived in sleep by similar illusions, and attentively considering these cases, I perceive so clearly that there exist no certain marks by which the state of waking can ever be distinguished from sleep, that I feel greatly astonished, and in amazement I almost persuade myself that I am now dreaming. So we have the stories that Swami Krishna tells about the Jnani. The Jnani, there was a farmer that was is a great Jnani. That means that everything will have a dream-like appearance thing. That not everything, the ultimate reality is the self within. But he's a farmer, he's an ordinary person. And he and his wife had a son that was born to them very late in life. Now, there's this belief, and I think it's true, that those parents who don't have children until late in life, that they take it as some very special blessing and boon, some very special thing. So this son, who was a very wonderful son, everyone loved him very much, somehow he came down with some high fever, and very quickly, before anyone could do anything, he died. So they had to send word to the farmer to come back. His son had died. So he comes back, and he doesn't seem to have much of a reaction. And his wife gets very angry. And the wife says to him, well, what kind of man are you? Such a wonderful son born to us late in life, suddenly dies, and you don't have a tear to shed for him. What kind of man are you? And then he says to the wife, you know the real meaning behind all of this. I had a dream last night. And in that dream, we had 8 sons. And each one was more brilliant than the other. One was a great archer. One was a great warrior. One was a great king. All of these were such wonderful jewels of sons. Now, when I wake up, I have to ask myself, do I mourn this one son who died, or those 8 sons who no longer are living? So then Swami Krishna says, for the Jnani, the waking state is no more real than the dream state. Now he tells the story at different times. Sometimes he says the dream state is as real as the waking state. But the point is that for the Jnani, the only reality will be the observer of all of this. Whether we're observing the dream or the waking state, the reality is the observer. So this, when Descartes, he comes up with the conclusion that the only statement that I can make is that I think, therefore I am. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Vedanta will say, no, even as I, we can't say that. That the awareness is there, that this is the one thing that we can't doubt. So the whole Vedantic philosophy, we can say, starts with this this radical type of doubt. What is the one thing that we can't question? So if we say, for example, that we have this material world, and we have something we call the consciousness. And the materialists will say that we'll start with this material world, and we'll be able to see through the process of evolution we can see how eventually life developed from non-life and consciousness developed from insentient things and everything, analyze things that way. The Vedantists will say that we have these two categories. One is this jada, and the other is tit. That if we want to say that there's only one source for everything, then we don't know anything about the existence of this external universe. If there's anything that we can call matter, that this is, Swamiji says, a metaphysical assumption that there's something called matter underlying what we see, but consciousness we can't doubt. So if we start with anything, we have to start with consciousness, and everything to see, everything can evolve out of consciousness itself. So, and it's a little bit off of the subject, but just to show the importance of doubt and questioning and not accepting anything unless really there's some type of foolproof aspect to it, that we find something that we can question, that'll be the bedrock for our philosophical understanding and conviction with regard to things. Now I want to move on to the next two terms, mata and darshana, because they're very similar and very close. And so mata, it spans this range of some type of doctrine or some type of even tradition. When Sri Ramakrishna uses it, Jotoma Totapati, he's talking about all different faith traditions. This can also be mata. But it can just be an opinion also. It can just be an opinion. This is a very important distinction, because for most of us, my opinion is truth. Your opinion is your opinion. My opinion is truth. So we have to really learn to make this very important distinction. And to what extent do we cling to our own opinion, to our likes and dislikes? See, there are some people, if you give them something to eat and they don't like it, they won't say, no, I don't like it, it doesn't appeal to me. They'll say, this is awful. Yeah, as if no one can possibly like it, right? So there's something which we call korela, the bitter gourd. And many people, they'll taste it. How can anybody eat this? This is a bitter thing, but people love it. And if you keep trying it and taste it, then yeah, it's a wonderful thing. Yeah. So this distinction between what is opinion and fact, this becomes a very, very important thing. There's a wonderful conversation that takes place between Swami Turiyananda and one of the disciples from California when they were in the Shanti ashram. The Swami Turiyananda, he was called by Swami Vivekananda to come to California to serve there, and they started this ashram in the middle of nowhere. Really, there was no water, no electricity, just in some valley, San Antonio Valley or something like that. And the devotees who went there were pioneers. They would build their own huts, they would do everything, so it wasn't much of a difficulty for them. Anyway, one of these devotees, her name was Arda Ansel. They called her Ujjwala. The name was Ujjwala. And this is from the beautiful book called Spiritual Talks. Yeah, I don't know if you have it here, very beautiful. It's mostly conversations with Swami Turiyananda, but also with Holy Mother and the Swami Shivananda and some others. So it says, one afternoon, Swami Turiyananda and Ujjwala just happened to meet. He asked her, Ujjwala, are you deep or shallow? Do you live and die in words, or do you live and die in principles? Before she could think of an answer, he added, this is the important part, in matters of opinion, swim with the current. In matters of principle, stand firm as a rock. And Ujjwala later commented, that was all. But he had given me in a moment guidance for a lifetime. Yeah, so this is something really tremendously important. That what is just our opinion? And I tried to emphasize yesterday, even whether we accept Advaita Vedanta or whether we're dualists, that also falls under Mata. We may argue no, that this is the truth. Non-dualism is the ultimate final truth. All of these fall under Mata. All of these are our opinion. There's not the final truth about anything. So when Sri Ramakrishna talks about this Mata, he talks about it in two ways. One, all of the different religious traditions. So he followed all of these. We know that he practiced all of these. So in India at the time, whether one is the Shaiva and the Vaishnava, the Shakta, or Muslim or Christian or whatever their faith was, that he looked upon all of these as only a path to God realization. So there's a famous statement, Joto Mat, Toto Pot. They made a movie about that also. There was a film, yeah, in the 70s. Did anybody see it? Anybody on these here? Joto Mat, Toto Pot. There was a film. There's a movie. It's quite nice. I happened to be in India at the time, and I remember seeing it. So this became a very, very famous statement. Some people thought this was the main teaching, that Sri Ramakrishna was born for this teaching. Of course, it was one of the most important teachings. So, but we have to extend this to all of the different philosophical schools. So we accept all of these because it appeals to us. Why do we become a non-dualist? Because it appeals to us. Is it ultimately infallible? Is there any way that we can prove that this is the ultimate final truth? Sri Ramakrishna says no, because this is not the truth. This is the path. The final truth is something that is beyond mind and speech. It's beyond mind and speech. Did I talk about I did, the sun in the containers yesterday?
Yes.
Yeah. So if we remember that idea that, or when we get to the depths of the ocean, then this all is melted away. So everything else is a means to the end. But Sri Ramakrishna adds a very special thing. He said, Yotomo Totobot Tobe Pot Ishonoi. But the path is not God. The path is not truth. It's the means to get to it. And there are many different means, and they work better for different people, that's all. So all of these quarrels that we have, not just among religions, but quarrels among the dualists, the non-dualists, the Shaktas, the atheists, all of that, agnostics. We have the different Buddhist schools. They say, see, the Buddhists are always in a very odd position. That we're always saying everybody's worshiping God by different name and form, and everyone will realize the same. But what about us? We don't care for this God idea so much. So even they can be included in all of this, because following the path that they follow, they'll also have that enlightenment experience, and they can have the highest type of realization. So this is that very important distinction between Mata and this final truth. So Darshana is nothing more than the same Mata systematized. And so we can't even say that, do we find truth in these darshanas? There's one of Thakur's favorite songs, Ke jane kali kamo, shora doshane na paye dorshan. Who can say what Mother Kali is like? So this is like saying, who can say what is the ultimate truth? And he says, you won't get the vision of God through darshana. See, it's a play on words. You won't get darshana through these darshanas. You won't realize God through, you won't find God in these philosophical systems. They'll allow you to reach there, but you won't find it there. So Swamiji says, God is not to be found in doctrines and dogmas. but in realization. So this is very helpful in ordinary life for us to keep reminding ourselves that, you know, this is my opinion about things, and my opinion is good for me. It doesn't, not that everybody has to follow it. We had one monk. I heard this story. It was much earlier. He used to like to engage in these philosophical discussions, arguments and things. And at the end of it, there would be some difference of opinion, and there would be no agreement. You have your opinion on it. So he would end up by saying, "To me, what you said is true. Tomon mote, according to you, yeah, according to you, yeah, in your opinion, it's absolutely right. What you said is absolutely correct and right. Tomon mote, according to you." That was it. So to me, this is something that I try to remind myself of, that I may have even some fairly strong conviction regarding, say, oneness of individual self and supreme self. But that doesn't mean that this is the only way that one can look at these things. There are all different angles that we can look at things from. Sri Ramakrishna was equally a dualist, qualified non-dualist, and a non-dualist, equally. Now, people will say, how can one, they contradict each other? Because he saw them as paths. You know, one of his favorite statements was a quote from, or something attributed to Hanuman. And the story was that Hanuman came into there was a darbar, the court was there, and everybody's there, and Rama's there, and Hanuman comes, and Rama asked him, "How do you look upon me?" So he makes a very famous statement. There's a beautiful Sanskrit verse. He says, "Deha buddhya tu dasoham." When I think of myself as this physical body, then I think that you're the master and I'm your servant. And then he says, "Jiva buddhya twadangshakaha." When I think of myself as an individual soul, then I think that I'm a part of you. You're the whole and I'm a part. And then he says, "Atma buddhya twameva aham." Twameva aham. When I think of myself as the Atman, then you and I are one and the same. No difference whatsoever. Then he says, "Iti me nishtita matihi." This is my firm conviction. Now, what is the firm conviction? Does it apply to the last line? That when I think of myself as Atman, then you and I are one and the same? Or does it apply to all of them together? I think, of course, that they're all equally true from a different point of view. This is why Swami says, he gives so many illustrations. In the middle of the room, it looks one way. From the corner, it looks a different way. If we look at the sun, from a distance, it's very small. We get closer and closer and closer, we see bigger and bigger, the same sun. So we see so many beautiful ways of looking at things. I'll give one very interesting example. That Sri Ramakrishna, he raises the question that why does the sky look blue? Or why does the ocean look, sometimes we see it a dark green color. And he says, because we see it from a distance. He said, if we go closer, we take the water in our hands, we see that there's no color whatsoever. So this is basically saying that why do we see Brahman with form? Because from a distance, we go closer, we see that ultimately it's formless. Okay, beautiful illustration, right? Now, the Vaishnavas come around, they have the exact opposite thing. It was equally beautiful that Sri Krishna, he sees somebody walking from a great distance and he can't recognize who it is. He only sees that it's a person. And as the person gets closer and closer and closer, he starts to see the features and everything. Then the person comes and he says, "Oh, it's my Narada. It's my great friend Narada." That from a distance, he couldn't make out who it was. But when he comes closer and closer, he sees the personality. So this is the other way of looking at it, that this infinite absolute, the Nirvana agreement, is not the whole picture. We're only seeing it from a distance, that the higher reality will be the Saguna Brahman, together with all of the qualities and everything. Now, if we say which one is right and which one is wrong, it's a silly question. Two very beautiful ways of looking at things. I'll give one other example, that Sri Ramakrishna gives the illustration of peeling the onion. Yeah, that we peel the onion, and when we get to the innermost core of it, we find that there's nothing there. So is the infinite absolute reality, that same self within all of it, pure Advaita Vedanta. Very beautiful illustration. But he talks about the bell fruit. That if you have a bell fruit, the bell fruit has three elements to it. It has this hard outer shell to it, right? It's something like a butternut squash. You picture a butternut squash, hard outer shell, and then it has the flesh, and then inside it has the seeds. Now, if we want to cook a butternut squash, we have to remove the shell. We remove the seeds, and the flesh is the essential part of it. So Swami Krishna says, but if you want to get the full weight of the fruit, if you only weigh the flesh, you don't get the full weight. You have to accept the outer portion and the inner seeds. Now, the outer portion means Jagat, and the inner seeds means Jiva. And this is classical Vishishta Dvaita Vedanta. This is Ramanuja's theory, exactly. And Sri Ramakrishna is he's giving this teaching. Now, was he a follower of Ramanuja or a follower of Shankaracharya? It's the wrong question. These are different models, different ways of understanding things. From one point of view, yes, we have to accept all living beings and all and this external universe as belonging to Brahman. This is a qualified non-dualism. Brahman alone exists, but it has parts. These are all qualifying as Brahman. So they're equally helpful, equally important. They're different models. This is the whole point of this idea of mata, that neither one can be taken as the ultimate and final truth that everybody has to accept. It's not science. It's not science. This is a direct experience. This is beyond. This is beyond mind and speech, this reality that we're trying to reach. All of these things are helpful. They're helpful, but they all fall under this mata. They all fall under more than just an opinion, but a beautiful school of thought, a way of looking at things. This is why Sri Ramakrishna said, when the dualists come, they think I belong to their school. The Brahmos, they think I belong to them. The Vaishnavas think that I'm also a Vaishnava. The Shaktas think that I'm also a Shakta. Because he loved all of them. He practiced all of them, and he found that all of them can take one to the highest truth. And the truth is beyond all of these. So very often he would say, see, we have these analogies for Brahman, that Brahman is like the sun. Brahman is like the vast ocean of the sky. And then he'll go and say that no analogy can capture Brahman. Nirupama. No analogy can get it. What is Brahman like? Brahman is like Brahman. What does ghee taste like? Ghee tastes like ghee. We can't compare. There's nothing else to compare it to. It's unique that way. So this is a very important distinction that Sri Ramakrishna made. This distinguishes him from the acharyas. The acharyas, they had a different role to play. They had to establish the truth of their position, their doctrine, on sound reason and logic. But ultimately, we accept what appeals to us. It has to appeal to us both from the heart and also intellectually. But some allow for more devotional feeling. Some allow for more common sense way of looking at things. Some people will say, you say this world is like a dream, but people are suffering in it. It doesn't help me to look upon it that way. Others will say, but we'll realize this at the end. It'll have a dream like me. So we're all different that way. So this is that this is the element of mata, and there's an element of darshan. Now, I want to add also what we call nishtha, because we may reach the wrong conclusion that if these are equally valid, then we can follow one day, follow another the next day. Then if God is manifest equally as Rama and Krishna and Durga and Shiva, then it doesn't matter. But the position of this idea of nishtha is we have to stick with one thing. And Thakur talks about, of course, if we dig for water in one place and we don't reach it, we start digging in other places, we'll never get it. So that we have to really stick to one particular path. Once we've decided on a path, we stick to it. Now, it doesn't mean that it can't include other things. This is also a mistake. That because we follow Sri Krishna, can we not read Sufi literature? Can we not read the Christian saints? Of course, we can do all of that. But our main focus will be on our Ishta Devata, on the path that we choose. This is called Nishtha. And Thakur gives a nice illustration. He says when the bride moves into her husband's home, this was of course traditional in India, the son remains home in the family, and his wife comes and lives with them, that she serves all the members of the family with great devotion and with great care and great attention and everything. But she has a special relationship with her husband. And it's because of her husband that she has this relationship with all of the others. So because we have our own path that we follow, we're very comfortable with, that we can appreciate all of the other paths because we understand that they'll all go into the same goal. But we can't jump around from here and there. In the beginning, it's okay. We experiment. But when we find something that appeals to us, then we have to stick with that. So this is called nishtha. Okay, now. Oh, yeah, let me just mention one more final thing. This was actually very, very important in my understanding of Vedanta, in my understanding of the role of philosophy in spiritual life. I was very young. I was just beginning in Vedanta. I maybe was 25 or something. And very highly involved in this Advaita Vedanta. I took it very, very seriously. That if I can understand all of this, then I'll get enlightenment. You know. So we have this one idea: Brahman alone is real, but because of Maya, this one appears as the many, something like that. So naturally, the question will come up: where does this Maya come from? And it's a big philosophical question: does it belong to Brahman? Because we can't have anything outside of Brahman. Yeah, but if it's some taint of ignorance, then Brahman is pure and unchanging. How can it belong to Brahman? How can it be outside of Brahman if Brahman alone exists? The second thing. So this question came up. So I asked one of our Swamis, and he gave a good answer. It was a nice answer and a very traditional type of answer, that when we have God realization, this Maya will disappear, then we don't worry about the question, where did it come from? So I'm thinking about this, and then almost as if to himself, he says, see, what a beautiful idea that is. Yeah, and then it really just hit me. This is just an idea. It's just an idea. Now, it's not the worthless idea. It's a very important thing and very helpful in understanding, but it's not the ultimate truth. It's a conception. It's a beautiful conception and way of understanding things, but it's just an idea. And what we're aiming for is something beyond all ideas. We're aiming for that thing which is aparoksanubhuti, which is understood not through the mind, through the heart, and through direct type of realization. So this is the importance of Mata and Darshana, but the limitation of it also. So we don't dismiss it. Yesterday somebody asked the question, yeah, then what's the need for any of this type of critical thinking? No, it's important. It's important. It'll eliminate all sorts of false ideas, all types of superstition. It'll give us conviction regarding the path that we have. Yeah. So now we get to this conviction, Vishwasa. And this conviction, again, it includes this idea that the path that we follow is only a path. But now we're starting to feel that this is something completely reliable. We no longer have to question these things. We don't have to keep going back over and over and over again these things. Thakur says that we have the grocery list. Somebody lost the list and they're searching all over for it. They found it, they read it, and threw it away. That now we know what to do. Now we have to go ahead and do it. So we have that faith that now we know that if we simply follow these teachings, that we'll have that final realization. One very nice way of understanding this type of conviction, we can have this conviction, this Vishwasa. I know many of you took initiation recently. After taking initiation, then we should have this type of firm conviction and faith that if we follow what we've been told, that we will reach the goal. This, at least for me personally, I think is something that we can really hold on to. And there's a very nice analogy for all of this. Swami Krishna says, try to imagine there's something buried in some treasure, for example, buried at the bottom of the ocean, and there's a chain. And this chain comes all the way into land, and we're searching for this treasure, and somebody says, here, I'm giving you the chain. All you have to do is go link by link by link by link, and you'll get that treasure. We don't know how many links it is. We don't know at what point we'll find ourselves underwater even. We have to have that faith. At some point we have to dive, at some point we have to really dive, but have that absolute conviction that if we continue with that, and this link by link by link, we can say repetition of the mantra, spiritual practice, that we'll get that treasure. So this now we've come to that point of Vishwasa. And when we really feel I'm holding it, that it's in my grasp, then this Vyakulata comes. And then this tremendous longing comes. And as I say, there's a little bit element of even agony that we're not getting that realization that we want. Thakur gives that one illustration. The disciple says to the Guru, what type of longing do we need to realize God? Vyakulata. And he says, come along with me. And he takes him to this nearby pond. And he says, now go in the water. And he presses his head under the water. And he holds it so long that the disciple is starting to get restless and is thinking, will I die? Is he going to drown me? And finally, he lets him up. And he comes up and he said, now tell me how you felt. And he said, I felt as if I would die for a breath of air. If I didn't get a breath of air, then life would go. He said, when you feel that way for God, you can't live another moment without God. You'll have that type of realization. So this illustration, it has two sides to it. One is longing for breath of air, and two, this longing to get out of the water. It's slightly different things. One is this vairagya, that this world no longer appeals to me. That I feel somehow I have to get out, escape, but not escape to nothing. So there's vairagya and then anuragya, this longing for that realization. When Sri Ramakrishna talks about his vairagya, dispassion, renunciation, he always adds this anuraga, that there has to be this longing for this God realization, this love of God has to be there. So now we've reached this point of Vishwasa, which develops into this Vyakulata. This is what Sri Ramakrishna says is this Arunodaya, this very beautiful word, Aruna Udaya, that just before sunrise, if you're ever outside on the beach or something where the sun will rise over the ocean, and you start to see a little pink before the sun comes up. you'll see the sky start getting a little orange pink color or something like that. He says, no, for certain, that within a very short time, the sun will come up. So then it's absolutely certain when we get to this, have this feeling, this tremendous longing for God realization. See, forget about philosophy at this point. Now it's all the heart. Everything is the heart, that tremendous longing for realization, and that is just a question of time. How long does it take? When if we look at a sunset, maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half hour. Yeah. So that means within a reasonable amount of it, we can't put any time limit or anything like that. But so this is that final rung of the ladder. The Papa often uses that illustration of climbing the ladder, that this will be that final rung. We start out. We may start out with a questioning attitude, but openness and some faith that this is a path that we see. These great souls come from this path. We have the shining examples. There's all the direct disciples, even the senior swamis that we see who come here. They follow this. Their lives have become blessed. They become very saintly. So we develop that tremendous conviction that if we follow this, that we can also attain to that state. But we recognize that our understanding is very limited. And we have a very open mind and questioning mind. We try to understand these things. And then we try to see, maybe distinguish what things belong to the past and what things are just suited to us, not necessarily the highest type of truth. Understand that truth will come with this kind of realization. So then real conviction comes, this longing for God comes, and then finally this realization will come. So this is that journey that I wanted to talk about today, that we start out with. There's a little bit of doubt or questioning. What is the meaning of life? What is the purpose of life? And we stumble sometimes across a path. Sometimes we're born into it. Very fortunate people are born into it. It suits us. And gradually we develop more and more conviction and continue with our spiritual life. And ultimately we'll get a very deep type of conviction that God realization is something possible. But another type of conviction comes that whether I realize God or not, that this is the best possible life that I can lead. This is also very important. That suppose someone would come up to me and say, you're not going to realize God in this lifetime. Well, I say, oh, then I wasted it. I could have gone out. I could have enjoyed myself. I could have been a big shot and made a lot of money and everything. They know that this life of dedication, life with an ideal, life of sacrifice, life of service, is the highest type of life. I have no regrets whatsoever, whether I realize God or I don't realize God. That this life has been a blessing for me because I've been able to follow the very high type of ideal. Of course, still hoping that we can have this ultimate experience. Of course, we long for that, but not doing it just as taking bitter medicine and hoping that something will come out of it. That we have to enjoy this journey also, and derive great satisfaction and contentment from the journey itself. Okay, so let me stop here, and we have plenty of time for questions. Yeah. And as I say, if there are any questions from yesterday also, or anything in general, you can also, yeah.
I do have a question.
Yes. You want to give him the mic? Yeah.
This has to do with the actual realization of God. You had talked about, is it possible to realize God in this lifetime? And let's say you've chosen your path, you've gone through all of that, and at that final moment, is this something or a step, if you will, that an individual give up, or is this something that only God takes? So it's coming from the point of view of a dualistic, does the jiva take that step, even though he has studied its entire lifetime, or is that final step taken by God alone? Is that an opinion or a truth?
Yeah. See, one of the difficulties in spiritual life is that we have this goal that's very vague for us. We don't really know what God realization means or what it's like or what the will it be an experience, and we don't really know. And we're given different, again, opinions by different types of people. And one of the, I would say, almost commonalities of all of this is that there's an element of grace. There's an element at the end that we get pulled in. So Swami Krishna talks about this magnet idea. That we do our part. We have to get close enough to the magnet, then we get pulled in the rest of the way. Or he talks about this raising the sail, that we have to do first row the boat out, and we have to lift the sail. It's very hard work. We have to do all of that. Then this breeze will come and take us the rest of the way. Now, does the individual merge into Brahman at the end? Does the individual retain some type of individuality? Is there an experience? Is there a heaven? All the different schools will have different opinions about these things. And again, this is a little bit of question of faith and everything. They'll actually fight tooth and nail over these things. The real argument between the dualists and the non-dualists has to do with this experience after death. Does the jiva remain a jiva? The non-dualists will say, well, there was never any ultimate reality to the jiva to begin with. That it was always false identification, that it was just the reflected sun, that at the end, you break that last container with the water, then the sun alone remains. And then others will say, well, what fun is that? That I'm just merged in Brahman, there's no experience. And then others will say, no, becoming one with the Brahman, there's such an Ananda, but we don't know exactly what that experience will be like. The dualists talk about different types of liberation. 5 different types. That some we're united with God. Some we live in the presence of God. Some we take on some of the qualities of God. All different types of things for different types of people. And then there's some traditions I mentioned yesterday that's very much like a Western idea of heaven. That you'll go and you'll live with Sri Krishna on the bank of the Jamuna raising cows. Some will say, I don't like raising cows. Why should that be my goal of life? Yeah. So the non-dualists will have their own way of understanding it. If we look at the Upanishads, the river will go and end up in the ocean. Or the drop of water will be the ocean. Is that drop of water still a drop of water? Some will, yeah, it's still a drop of water, but it's merged with the ocean. Others will say, no, it's just the ocean at this point. So this is again that difficulty of distinguishing between the reality and our conception of the reality. And now we're talking about our conception. What is our conception of God realization? And will it match the reality of God realization? And this ultimate experience, there's no one to come back and explain what it was like, even this Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So I wish I could give a more definite answer to your question, but again, it falls under the category a little bit of speculation. But we have the type of faith that this is something not just worth striving for, the ultimate aim of life. We have Buddhist traditions that will say it's just blowing out the candle, blowing out the flame of the candle. That's nirvana. Don't expect any heaven or hell or anything after that. It just puts an end to this round of birth and death. There'll be schools like that. So who's to say ultimately, what's the final conclusion and everything? Now, is it possible that this experience of liberation will depend on the path that we take? Is that possible? That there's something subjective about it? Could be. that we each have our own type of heaven that we'll experience afterwards. According to Vedanta, we'll come back again from it. That's not the final experience, but are these things subjective or objective? These different lokas that we hear about, different heavens and hells and everything. Is it just some experiential thing that takes place? We don't have good answers to all of these questions, unfortunately. So, sorry. Wish I could give a better answer.
Next one.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, yes. Yes.
So, is that also a concept? If it is Jivan Mukta,
Mhm.
are the expression of the divinity in this world itself? Is that also a concept, or that itself makes you feel joyous, and is that part of the nirvana?
Yeah, you mentioned Jivan Mukta.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about that, because the real emphasis in Vedanta and all of the Eastern traditions is not liberation, final liberation. The real emphasis is attaining that state of realization while we're living. Okay, now will every Jivan Mukta be the same? If we say that one has attained that state of ultimate liberation, even then there'll be differences. So Sri Ramakrishna, he took, for him, the state of Jivan Mukti is the state of Vijnana. He uses this term. Those who get to the roof and come back down again. They're free souls. They're not bound by anything. That there's no karma that will cause them to be born again. They live in the world as a free soul. But some will still be devotees. Some will keep this ego of devotion, he says. And some will keep this ego of knowledge, depending upon the path that they took. So Sri Ramakrishna gives the example of Shankaracharya. He kept this ego of knowledge. So what does that mean? That in that state of perfection, when he thought of himself, the thought that came to his mind was, I am that. I am one with that ultimate reality. For Sri Ramakrishna, the thought that came into his mind, predominant thought was, I'm a child of the Divine Mother. Equally free souls. So even here, their worldview, their mindset will color their view of the world in that state of liberation. So we know, we can talk about that. We can understand. We can know the experience of those God-realized souls. But what the state of final liberation is, that's the one that's difficult for us to say anything about.
I was wondering about, like, what to say about, someone that's like scared of realization, because I think a lot of people are into such a
Say that again?
scared of realization.
Yes. Yeah. Swami used to make fun of people in the West. He says that, well, Swamiji, what will happen if we lose our individuality? So he used to make fun of them. Individuality. And he said, right now, you're not even individuals. When you know your real nature, you'll be individuals. Yeah. First of all, it depends a little bit upon our understanding of what realization means. If we have this feeling that realization means that I'll go into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, I'll give up the body in 21 days, I don't want that. How many people raise your hands? If today you can be granted Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and it'll be so deep that the mind will never come back down again, the body will fall off in 21 days, how many people will sign up? Okay, we have a few. Older people doesn't count. The younger people, we have a few. But there'll be many who will say, no, what is that? We like this idea of Jivan Mukti. We want to live in this world as we want to become enlightened. We don't want to exit the world just yet. We want to enjoy it a little bit as an enlightened soul. Yeah. Of course, we have this other concepts of realization where life becomes joyful, where we see God everywhere. Everything is a manifestation of the divine. This is something that shouldn't scare anybody. There'll be some, again, jnanis, for them, everything will be self. I feel that my divine presence at every minute, everything looks hazy and dreamlike and Maya, and it's a passing show and everything. But even that is a joyful kind of thing. So I think it's a question of our understanding. What is our understanding of this state of enlightenment that would make us fearful of it? See, there was a devotee who went to Sri Ramakrishna, and he observed his samadhi, and he said, you know, I'd seen somebody else in this who claimed to be in the state of samadhi, and it looked like it was painful for him. I thought it was a terrible thing. He said, thank God I've seen this is Sri Ramakrishna, how joyful the whole thing is. So if we understand it, this is why we need holy company. If we have the company of these great souls who have attained this enlightenment or high states of spirituality, we know that it's only joy. See, this nirvana of the Buddhists, we may say that it's emptiness or nothing, but it's really the description we have in Buddhist tradition is also ananda, 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 bliss, bliss, bliss. Yeah. So I would have to get a good argument why somebody thinks that this is something to be afraid of. Unless they say, oh, we won't be able to maintain our family to keep our job, what will happen to us? Yeah, no, that's legitimate, of course. People can think like that. Yeah. Let this be something at the end of my life. Let me take care of all my business and take care of things first. Yeah, that of course we can understand. There are very few people who, and even for Sri Ramakrishna, that he said, yeah, that you want to devote your whole life to God. What about your family and all of that? You have to look after that side of your life also. But can there be God realization and still one can live in the family and take care of everything? Yes, Sri Ramakrishna says that he gives a nice example. Suppose someone is a clerk, works in a shop, and he gets sent to jail. When he's released from jail, what will he do? Will he go jumping about dancing in the street? He'll go back to being a clerk. So he can still do that. There's a very famous Buddhist statement that the monk says, before enlightenment, I used to carry water and chop wood. After enlightenment, I can carry water and chop wood. Yeah. Yeah. But everything has changed. Yes.
Swamiji, isn't there like a conflict here? Like Swami Vivekananda talks about karma yoga and he gives example of a housewife and her husband, and a monk passes by who destroys birds because they put leaf on him. And the housewife says, I am not those birds. Yeah. I'm serving my husband, so you have to wait, right? And then he sends to a person who does like a manual job.
Butcher. He's a butcher.
Right?
He's
And
very,
then
yeah.
it says, go learn about liberation from him. And
Yeah.
this monk is like, I spent 20, 30 years and I have to go to a butcher to learn, right? So my point, Swamiji, is when we talk about not being scared of liberation, but again, if we go on jnana or raja yoga, right? So one of the concern is extreme vairagya comes in, and then you have a responsibility to family or samsara, right? So how do you handle that?
Yes. This was seen, of course, in the life of some of the household disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. It was a terrible conflict for him, especially terrible conflict for him. How he envied these young boys who became the future monks of the order. How he pestered, even prayed to Sri Ramakrishna for permission to become a monk. How some of the other householders also did. Yeah, the longing for God realization, and this when this vairagya comes in the tradition, early Indian tradition, one could give up the family, but it had to be very, very serious. It had to be really this perfect renunciation, no type of escapism or anything. Family had to be taken care of and cared for. We have this in the life of Swamiji's grandfather. That Swamiji's grandfather, after the birth of one son, so Swamiji's father was an only child, only son. After the birth of one son, leaving the family in decent condition, he left and became a wandering monk. Now, in our order, we don't allow it. That if someone is married, and Swami Krishna also many times he would tell them, no, you have a responsibility to your family, that try to understand that internal renunciation is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And that through that one can also get liberation. Now, the story about this young monk, we have to understand that he lacked a certain sincerity and that he suffered from tremendous pride. And his householder was a greater spiritual person than he was. In chapter 6, first verse of chapter 6 of Gita, this is a very important and revolutionary verse. It says that the greatest sannyasi is the householder who performs action without any attachment. And the person who only takes on the cloth and lives the life of a monk without really having that sincerity is not to be considered a sannyasi at all. So people who have that tremendous vairagya, yeah, they of course could withdraw from the family a little bit, like M did, spend more time in solitude and everything, but have to somehow realize that mental renunciation is more important than external renunciation. But yeah, it can be a conflict in the minds of people, and it can be the other way around also. You can have monks who are frustrated that they didn't fulfill their potential with a career or family or something. That also can happen. That also can happen. It's not, it shouldn't happen, of course. But yeah, so yeah, it is a dilemma. And we have some examples of some of the greatest monks who did leave family behind. Look at Buddha, newborn son, when he renounced the world, but it was for the good of the world, and he went back and looked after the family afterwards. Chaitanya Deva, he also was married. He left behind a young wife. So yeah.
Swamiji,
Yeah.
I have a follow-up on
Okay.
that. Since you mentioned the householder, and right, so in the gospel, Sri Ramakrishna talks about austerity and spiritual discipline, right?
Mhm.
So again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it tilts more towards people who have renounced the world and for the monks, right? So how, as a householder, can, like you quoted Deepa's saying, so how would that apply in the current situation or, you know, the world?
Yeah, when we read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, we have to sift out some things that are meant specifically for not just for monks or householders. Some are specifically for the Brahmos, some specifically for the Vaishnavas. And when he talks about fanaticism, one-sidedness, specifically when he talks about too much self-service and not enough religion for the Brahmos. And sometimes things, yeah. There's one instance where he's talking about this vairagya, this tremendous renunciation, and then is there. And somebody says, well, what about us? And then Sri Ramakrishna says, I'm talking to him. Yeah, this is for him. Don't bother about this too much. Yeah. So we have to look at some things, but Thakur always emphasized this internal renunciation is the most important. External is secondary. Yeah.
Good question. You can stop.
So, now we
Yeah, we have lunch.
have lunch now.
Okay. Let's have closing prayer.
Okay, let me end with the closing prayer. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pasyantu Ma Satyakabha Bhave Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May all beings be happy. May all be free from disease. May all see only auspicious things. May none suffer from misery. Oh, peace, peace, peace be unto you. So let me thank everybody for your wonderful hospitality, for the seriousness with which you all came and participated in all the nice questions and everything. And hope that we can all meet again sometime.
So we have potluck lunch and there is enough food, so everybody is invited, even if you are not brought food.